So I gathered this group of people here because they have different experiences in Web3, different life experiences, different nationalities, different genders, different levels of power, different focuses of skill set. And I want to explore together with them the tensions between doing what you want, doing what you can, and doing what you have to. As founders, as employees, as traders in certain market conditions, how many different types of mindset we have to have at once to operate in this mesh of worlds that is Web3. So I'm just going to let them introduce themselves first. There's no plan. There's nothing formal. It's going to last an hour and a half. And hopefully no one will cry. He's not Lane Rettish. Lane didn't show up yet. So I captured a wild super delegate.
Filler. Yeah.
Let's see if it works out. Let's start with Manu.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manu. I'm one of the founders of Doing Good, and also I've been founding member of API 3 DAO and been interacting in multiple DAOs like Meta Cartel, Own Fund, and a couple of other more.
I'm Joshua Lapidus, a founding steward of Opolis and Spork DAO, which is the parent DAO for Eat Denver. That is our little Buffcorn. We did a PFP, the Buffcorn Biddle Brigade, that I also PM. And this guy right here was the first time I ever heard about Metacartel at the last DevCon.
So I'm Elko, formerly the first person in the world to pay all my bills by writing proposals to DAOs back in 2018. It wasn't easy. Helped put the DAOist together and been involved in a bunch of different DAOs as well.
Hey y'all, my name is Camila Ramos. I'm the head of developer relations at Fuel Labs. I'm a longtime educator and a contributor to DAOs like Developer DAO and Women Build Web3.
Hey, I'm Nick, the CEO of Fuel Labs and founder. And yeah, I build, run, ship, do everything in between for Fuel and our scalability system. And yeah, Cami is our wicked Unreal DevRel.
Okay, so let's start with the hard part. What components of your trajectories, you can be current or you can talk about a very specific hard moment that you had where what you wanted to do and what you know how to do wasn't at all available and you just had to do what you had to do. If you can take that, because these are slightly dark times for DAOs right now. There's a lot of pain and our conversations about the pain are not as in depth as they could be for good reasons. But maybe we can learn something by looking at the pain of the past. Everybody here is a pretty big OG, been around for a while. Everybody here has a very sassy Twitter account. Well, Josh doesn't, but I know I can feel the sassiness inside his heart waiting to come out. So maybe we start with Josh this time.
Thanks, Alco. I got into Web3 from Lyft, where I was doing business development, driver growth, user acquisition. And I started messing around with Ethereum and tokens. And I found these guys who were building Chaser, which was a decentralized rideshare. And I wanted to destroy Uber and Lyft, which is not really something you're allowed to say when you work at Lyft. But I was going through it. There was a transition period right after the IPO. They said you can find another job at the company or you can fuck off. Oh, can I swear? Yeah. All right. And so I actually made some friends, Jacob Cantelli, who was like, no, come work at Consensus. And I wanted to go to Consensus to build a decentralized rideshare to fuck Uber and Lyft, they take 25% of every dollar out of communities. And for big cities, that's not as big a deal. But for smaller towns, that's a lot of money. And I was like, we could decentralize this. And I have never gone back to decentralized rideshare. I think the Ikigai might be there. But out of necessity, ended up at Consensus. And then from Consensus, ended up at Opolis, where, we're building some pretty incredible things that are changing the world, but it's not the decentralized rideshare.
You want painful? Yeah, okay. Well, so I started with Ethereum and crypto. I started with crypto in 2013, initially doing a lot of mining, stuff like that. Evolved into working with a very early Ethereum, so nothing was running. It's pre-mainnet. It was very early days when it started. When we were getting started, nothing worked. It was a disaster, and everything, you didn't know what was going wrong all the time. But I guess I was totally obsessed with this very particular thing that was sort of evolving out of Bitcoin. It was evolving out of these other systems that was philosophically, metaphysically very different from a company or a group or a foundation or anything. It was something different in the way that the system worked. And so there was a lot of pain to get things working, but eventually I did. I got a bunch of apps working on a very early Ethereum. I actually also joined Consensus very early. So it's like number 16 or something. Although Joe made it out to be much bigger at the time. So I was like, oh, this is a big company, you know, but apparently that's like sometime around when I joined. And there was some pain with Consensus for sure. I was there when they like halved the company, and it was like super painful to watch everyone around you leave. And then, you know, I think there was some big moments. I think the DAO hack was really wild. Watching the ecosystem teetering on the edge, maybe not even being a thing. And then, you know, I think for myself, just working in crypto and doing crypto stuff for this long, you are in it because you truly believe there's some truth to it and there's some beauty to it that makes it really different from typical things that humans do. But it's extremely painful to go through the cycles over and over and over again and go through different periods of what the technology is. I think like for someone that's anxious, it's really hard, you know? I don't understand how I've still continue to do it. I really don't. But I guess there's something with crypto that's very innately different. And I think the pain is worth it to do really cool things. And I think a lot of people here are very optimistic about changing the world, and they want to change the world, and they want to have a protest in some form about that. So I think it's just that at this stage, you know, you go through the pain, but the pain's worth it, because otherwise we're just going to be subject to all the existing systems that, you know, aren't really working for us or aren't working for us well, and, you know, and they suck. So you have to try something else, you know, you have to try to do things differently. But yeah, that's maybe a memory.
Yeah, painful moment. I think I'm actually going through one right now where there's a source of tension between what I want to do and what I can do and what I think what the world needs. And pretty recently, so for some context, I'm Colombian. I was born here in Bogotá, actually. I've lived in California for most of my life now. And since I've been in crypto, you know, obviously it's been very Eurocentric. All of the events are mostly in the United States and Europe. This year, they've done a really good job, ETH Global in particular, and now DevCon, of hosting things in Latin America. But this was really the first year where there's been a significant number of crypto events hosted in Latin America. And I think for me, I'm kind of in a spot where I'm looking around and I'm like, this isn't what the world needs. Just from a viewpoint of like problems that need to be solved, places that people can benefit specifically from crypto in terms of financial rails. And I'm in a place right now where like I have this ideology and I want to implement it, but I live in America, I live in California. I don't have these deep developer connections in places like this. And I think it's really important for us as a community. And I think there's a shift happening here at this event, at DevCon, at this greater week, where we're like, oh, like all of these countries are full of people just like us, who have problems just like us, who are not vastly different from us, who are facing a lot of different challenges that are pretty unimaginable to people like us, at least people like me who live in California. And I think I'm at a place where I'm like, how do I take my network and my social capital and my money and everything that I can to implement what I want to see in the world and kind of just like lead people into thinking in that direction. So then the same thing. And last week, I published a piece where I kind of went in depth on this. It's on my Twitter if you guys want to see. My handle is Cami in this thing. And it's called The Dead End of Eurocentric Crypto. where I kind of outline with a lot of data and a lot of facts around what crypto usage looks like in Latin America right now, what are the problems that they're facing, and my thesis on how I think that if we continue to be very Eurocentric focused, we're going to walk ourselves into a dead end. Because for me, innovation comes from a place of necessity, and we're just a population who doesn't have that much necessity, and that's why we're doing shit like crypto dig butt NFTs. We're trying to think of things to do with this, and we can't really think of anything good right now. And I deeply respect everyone working in this space, including, everyone here who's trying to come up with use cases that solve real problems. But I think the answer is kind of sitting right in front of us, where there's a bunch of real problems, and now we just have to kind of like mobilize to solve them and empower the communities there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. My situation's a little weird because I have no idea how I ended up here. I'm not from a powerful family. I don't have even a bachelor's degree. I've been working at the front lines of activism in South America for more than the half of my life. And I just ended up here because of DAOs. And one of the things I'm tensioned in between right now and in my Ikigai is that I somehow got this respect and allowance to be an event organizer, which I see as a ritual builder. And this is the place where all the cultural biases kind of clash physically. And you have to exercise a ridiculous amount of pre-sensitivity to make sure that these points of view fit. And I've achieved a certain modicum of success. I'm for the first time in my life last year, I'm not afraid of running out of money to pay rent, which only came at 35 years old, which is a very interesting experience to have. I'm 36 now, basic math. But at the same time, I respect this allowance that I have to be a ritual builder. But now I finally have been around long enough that I have enough self-esteem to understand that the ideas I've had intuitionally before, I could now build as technology. And some of the things I've done actually got out there and got front run by people with more money, with dev teams and things like this. And I'm really tensed between do I run away from the ritual maker thing and go build civic tech that I know will work because I've been in the front lines of this for a very long time? Or do I just accept the humble allowance that I've been given in having it's easier for me, if anybody wakes up tomorrow and tries to get this together semi-alone, it's kind of easier for me to do it because of the history, right? So I need to respect that. So that's kind of where I'm tensed right now, a little bit. And I know you're going to blow this up, so that's why I left you last.
From my side, I'm in crypto because of my pain. I'm Venezuelan, as many of you know. I have experience from the government taking everything away from my family. The government trying to kidnap me. The government killing one of my best friends. The government putting friends of mine in jail. The government printing as much money as they can and basically getting my family completely poor. And also, I also had the opportunity to work in very evil companies or very evil industries. I work in the oil industry as a field engineer looking for petroleum. And when I started to understand actually how that whole ecosystem works, it's actually really disgusting and painful to be part of it and realize that it actually goes against your values. And when you move, when I moved to the internet, let's say, type of work, it was also at the very beginning super painful. Why? Because first of all, I was working, as I told you before, as a field engineer, looking for petroleum, had nothing to do with tech. And then when I got into the tech space, people would judge me for example, in Paris, first because I didn't speak French, and I couldn't get a job because I didn't speak French. I actually had to fake that I wasn't a student, so I got an internship. And I shouldn't be getting an internship when I was actually getting the job that I got. So they made me become a student in order to get a job. And then after that, I was able to show in the company where I was working that actually I knew a little bit of what I was doing, and I became the head of mobile for Africa in Rocket Internet. Rocket Internet is like this massive venture builder. What they do is they copy any business model, and they just inject a lot of cash. And I thought that I was doing something good in Africa by creating an alternative from, let's say, Uber Eats, Booking.com, Amazon, and this company was called Jumia. Jumia became the largest marketplace in Africa, and by working there, I realized that basically what I was doing in the oil field, which was basically colonizing land, I was doing it on the internet, colonizing Africa with cash. And just injecting a lot of money into let's say, into this company that I actually just extracting as much money from Africans. And then I got into crypto, and I thought that, crypto was more, let's say, aligned with my values. But the more I'm in crypto, the more I realize that also the same patterns that I realized in the Web2 space, they're also here as well. And it's full of shit. And also, you start to realize that the money is actually very centralized, that actually everyone is trying to follow the biggest dick in the space. And yeah, I'm tired of this bullshit. It's full of shit. And we say here that we are coming together to create something new for the betterment of humanity, but in reality, it's for the betterment of the ones that are funding those companies, and actually it's very, very few again. So you need to actually go and knock their door and pretty much like bend your knees if you want to be within those, let's say, within those categories that they accept or that they invest. And if you're creating something that they believe is not going to be generating cash immediately, then what you're creating is not impactful enough. So yeah, I think that the whole space is full of shit. Here, most of the people don't really care about humans. They care about themselves, and they care about, basically profiting from someone else. So that's colonialism to me in a new way. That is really, really painful for me to see it like right now that we are in this bear market, to see how actually most of the people behave. And it's actually kind of good as well, because I'm realizing who are the real authentic people there that are here for creating with, let's say, with values, and not there just to extract value. I think that, all of these painful moments are actually helping us understand what's going on. And yeah, then you can make decisions on how you want to move forward. But yeah, it's full of pain, and more with these markets, as you said. Like, I've been experiencing this since 2016 with the hack of the DAO, and then after when COVID happened, when we were launching the marketing DAO for Ethereum, and the idea was to create this, marketing department for Ethereum, and then the market completely crashed, and then yeah, basically everything disappeared because this marketing DAO was relying on donations, and no one wanted to donate when the Ethereum price went from 500 to 80 bucks, when Corona happened. So then you start to realize, is it really like, okay, we're going to build something because we need it, or is it just because I'm just going to make money with it? So that's super painful to see. And I actually just want to see more people that are suffering from this come together, because at the end of the day, we are the builders. We are the ones who are creating, and not the ones that are providing money only.
Anybody got a retort? So let me get a sentiment from the crowd. Who's comfortable raising their hands to the question that everything in Web3 is more than 50% full of shit? Yeah. Okay, so my intuition was right.
That was almost unanimous.
It's beautiful to see the market crash a little bit and the veils fall. Because I never had anything, these moments are quite comfortable and very interesting for me. It's actually pretty fun. But there's a darkness to this fun, because it's watching people who made a lot become uncomfortable with a loss that is not as big as what was made. And I have a few truisms. There's only a few in my life that I really stick to, right? And if you want to be able to win, you gotta be able to take a loss, right? And I'm as a person who depends on sponsorships to survive and who actually charges the cheapest fucking sponsorships in the space because I had never done a benchmark. And when I did, I was like, huh. Let's yeah. And then when I finally caught wind of what was happening, the market crashed. And then we put this together with like 25% of the usual support, but to get that support, it costed 66% of my attention, right? So every detail in this space, which I think turned out okay. Okay, can I get a warm note? 50% more than okay, the event. Is it true? Okay, send us some DMs for next time because this might be the last big DAOist if things continue the same way. There's going to have to be a new model, a new design, right? Because maybe the swag bag is not important, right? Maybe the sticker is not important. Like, what's important is us here coordinating the shit out of the bad incentives. But then again, the more successful I've become, the more people I meet who are just like, dude, stop this bullshit. Just like make bank. And these are people I actually love. So I've been having these sincere conversations. And I honestly, if I had a button, you can fucking shoot me in the face. If I had a button I could press and become like profit oriented, I would press it. It's just not in me. It's just not, like I don't have it. Right? So my Ikigai is how to be generous and stupid and win. And it's not working out. So I wanted, like, this is a emotional support group for the people who actually dare to veer away from game theory optimal behavior. So can you confess to your non-optimal behaviors? Where are you leaving money, power, and influence in the table to appease to your inner self in some way? Is there maybe a powerful question there, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think with this conversation, there's something deeper that is maybe also very painful to admit too, which is that I think money and incentives is a massive driver of human behavior, as we know. It's huge. It's like the biggest force to get people to do things. And sometimes it is not what is pretty. And it's not, it doesn't feel right all the time. But at the same time, there's things where incentives driving this kind of situation can create an enormous amount of good. And I've seen that firsthand. I've seen it too, like some of our devs are even in Ukraine when the banking system went down. There was nothing like just being able to pay them, USDC, etc. Just like that stuff, those rails work. That was amazing. It was an amazing feeling. But it's not good enough because like that's just like a small case, that's not enough to justify this whole system. But the thing is, like, even when I got started with Ethereum, Vitalik had a very poignant sense about capitalism and he has some libertarian values, but he's also not a libertarian by any means. And there's something about crypto to look at capitalism or look at these drivers and try to use them for good or try to use them to make people do things, but make the outcome actually beneficial in a way that isn't just like a typical business, which usually ends up just being a gatekeeper. So like, I think, and this is a very huge conversation, so I don't think we're going to get to a solution here. Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, yeah, I think there's some wild incentives and drivers because of human behavior, because of capital. But I think there is a lot of sin to that capital too. There's a lot of negativity towards all of that. And there's a lot of unfairness to the distribution. And, that I think is something that humans, they struggle with even now because we have such awareness of it now, that we have such distribution issues across the world, But I can't sit here and tell you that every capitalist endeavor, everything is inherently just evil or bad. It's also just, it's some kind of driver that humans are using to do things with each other. And I do believe it can be used for good, but I think it also can be used for evil. And I think in some ways this happens a lot. So, my hope is that with blockchain, at least when you build these things, that you, again, use things like DAOs, you use things like the tools to enable more democratization of what they do and ways to increase the accessibility of their value such that you don't end up with an evil corporation that runs it as a gatekeeper, but you end up with something that sits on its own and serves people in the world and does so on its own autonomously, and that's it. And that's what it does. And if it takes some amount of capitalism to drive that forward, I'm fine with it. And I think that that's good. But I also think that you need to look at it at all this stuff as a tool and not the solution. And I don't think crypto is the solution to a lot of things. I think it's a protest. It started as a protest, but it's not a solution to everything. It's really not. And in fact, it's bad for a lot of things. And in fact, it's horrible for certain things. So it's like, it's just a new, interesting primitive. But again, all the evils of the crony capitalism, etc., play out in this industry all the time. And that's just, it's extremely unfortunate. And I've seen it almost since it started, literally since my first days doing it. But I'm not scared of that either. And I also think that it can be used positively, but it's a force. And I don't want to call it bad and I don't want to call it good. But yeah.
I kind of want to push back slightly.
Yep.
I think that everything should have crypto. All of it, all the things.
Interesting take.
Well,
totally
and here's why. And
Too.
one of the things we evangelize at Opolis and also Spork DAO is this new, not new, it's an old legal wrapper that we've reinvented, the cooperative. And the innovation that John Paller came up with is this tokenized patronage, which we've taken the shares of a cooperative and tokenized them. So it's crypto enabled. And this stakeholder capitalist model makes it so that you can involve venture capital, you can involve the big bad guys without giving them extraordinary return, and making it so that the people who are the members of the cooperative are the owners of the cooperative. The employees, the contributors, are the owners of the cooperative. And if what I'm describing sounds like a DAO, it's because that's the way it's structured. A co-op is literally a DAO with a legal framework. I think that we can use this sort of framework, an old system with a new system, to basically destroy crony capitalism entirely.
From the developer's perspective.
Well, from, I guess, the perspective of somebody who didn't experience, were you a consensus day?
No.
Okay. So from that perspective, like when we are trying to build, but at certain way, the structure of the game is already laid out, right? So I guess.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts about the following, and I haven't really shared them publicly out of fear. But here we're dispelling fear and we're just being open and vulnerable. But as I mentioned in my intro, I'm a core member of Women Build Web3, which is a community for top talented female non-binary engineers. And as I've been in that space, I've seen kind of in the last 12 months what I will, maybe nickname the women's space blow up. There's a lot of new communities that are specifically targeting either onboarding women or supporting women in one way or another. And as you're saying, like this kind of framework has been laid out where it's super easy to just spin up a DAO and like all the tooling is there and you can just kind of get started rolling from day one. And talking about kind of the evils of money and like kind of where I have a lot of pain right now is I'm seeing a lot of these communities being spun up, I think, for the wrong reasons. I think they're seeing an economic opportunity to come up and there's not a vested interest in supporting the cause that they say they are. And this is obviously not a generalization. I mean, I'm probably talking about a very specific number of projects, and there's probably a lot of projects out there that are doing very amazing, positive, like clean work. But there are some out there that are kind of dirtying the space and making me embarrassed and making people around me embarrassed to be part of the space, because what's happening is protocols and organizations want to support women, right? It's a cool cause. It's something that's very, interesting to say you support. So what they do is they kind of just blindly throw money at anyone that says, we're a community of women doing XYZ. with no vetting, no type of research, no type of anything. And what's ending up happening is that a lot of these communities are getting tons of money, and you're seeing the founders like living like a super jet luxury lifestyle under the guise of supporting women or whatever it is that they're doing. And when you look at these DAOs and you look at what's actually going on, it's like 2 or 3 people at the top are getting paid like $10,000 a month as their core team payment. And they're flying all around the world, like doing XYZ. Meanwhile, the people at the bottom that are actually putting in the work to either organize events, run hackathons, do workshops, do education stuff, the message to them is, oh no, we're a DAO. Like, this is your contribution to the space. You shouldn't expect to get paid. It's wrong to expect to get paid. Meanwhile, yeah, I mean, I see faces. That's exactly my fucking face, where I've talked to some of these DAOs and I've tried to do some vetting on them in kind of our world, where we want to make sure we're not partnering with these types of organizations. And one of the tools that we've come up with is like a KYC kind of, but specifically for DAOs. And we ask for transparency around their treasury, who controls the treasury, who's the core team that gets paid, how does everyone get paid, like what's the distribution of money. And it's something that we offer upon a partnership agreement as well, so people can know kind of what we're about and our ideals. And what I'm seeing is, honestly, there's just so much scamming going on, and that's really what it is, like a lot of fucking scamming. And no one is really hip to it, because I mean, how could you be unless you're sitting there like deep in the trenches like I am, like working very specifically with these groups. And it's been a source for me where on one hand, I'm like, part of our job and part of my job specifically as someone with like maybe a bigger network and a bigger voice is to call out these types of things. And, you know, that's part of, I think, my job as a leader. And then the other part of me is like, I don't want to, you know, it's just a few rotten apples. I don't want to call out the entire community, because there's a lot of good people doing work where it's like, I don't want to, you know, throw shade on the entire group, because a lot of them are like very strong. They have very strong ideals, but it's just like a few people at the top are fucking it up for everybody. And I kind of sit in a place where I'm like, what do I do? Do I call these people out publicly and say, you need to look into them? Like, look at their fucking treasury. Like, look at their transactions. They're paying like the same 2 people every fucking month and no one's noticing. Or do you just like, I don't know, keep it on the low and wait for people to put 2 and 2 together and like kind of not be seen as, and then there's like layers to this, right? It's like, I'm a woman, they're women. I never want to be someone who like hates on women. I never want to be perceived, because I'm not that, right? But more so, I don't want to be perceived as someone who hates on women, or someone who could be perceived as being jealous. Like, oh, you're just jealous they're doing better than you. You're jealous they're getting more money than you. You're jealous they're doing things that you're not doing. But there's a reason we're not doing these things. There's a reason that we don't participate in a lot of these activities, because our mission is not to bring in as much money as we can and do XYZ. Our mission is actually just to directly support female engineers with direct funding and mentorship and opportunities for them to grow their own skills as developers. So that was a lot of words to say, basically. A lot of this stuff is a scam. And I think we all sit in a pretty difficult spot between what's like, what exactly do we do, and how, and what risk are we personally willing to take in calling these things out? Because it could be that I just name drop them right now and everyone's like, oh my God. And then tomorrow nothing changes. Like, their funders probably aren't going to take the money back, right? You guys probably aren't going to stop following them on Twitter. They're not going to stop getting invited to panels. They're not going to stop getting invitations to do these things. So it's like, at what point do you say, am I going to take a reputation hit and, you know, possibly be perceived as XYZ, but then nothing's going to really change? Because
like, we exist on chain. This is about transparency. We've been having this conversation, and poor Josh got an earful from me in Paris. Like, it's time that we band together so that we don't have bad behavior following us into this space. We've already got people who are popular just because they're loaded or because they're influential and they're behaving badly. And like, let's be a community and rise up.
One of the things that confounds me the most about the space is that people actually care about Twitter follower count. But what I wanted to say, like, it actually makes a difference. I had no idea we would actually turn into this. But then again, all the perversions happen. I've seen people that run one podcast get paid $6,000 a month by a DAO. Somebody that writes one newsletter once a month get $4,500. So just as the same as there's founders that are like mooching from the top, in these big sprawling meta organizations, there's plenty of places to hide.
Isn't that what?
Well, yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Like, how can I say, for example, that somebody shouldn't get $6K to run a podcast? Right?
Well, hold on, go back a step. Isn't that what, like, I mean, there's a lot of anonymous Twitter accounts that do this kind of thing. Wouldn't anons solve this problem for you?
like, if I ask them to out these groups, or
Like, you could have a alt Twitter account that's just doing these.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that honestly, but then it's like this random OX fuckscammergroups.com, right? Like has no reputation. People are gonna be like, what the fuck? Like, who cares what this person says? There's no real person. You know, it's hard to believe an anonymous account with no followers, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but all of them start somewhere and then they end up.
And also for me personally, as a very prideful Aries, for my zodiac people in here, you know, I'm a fucking Aries. Okay, I'm not a pussy. That seems like a pussy move to me. Okay, I'm not gonna come out anonymously and say this. I'm gonna say it as myself, or I'm not gonna say anything. And I appreciate you bringing it up because I think for me, I've felt like maybe people won't be supportive, and that's maybe what's been holding me back. But if I, you know, and it's always something that you overthink, right? Of course, people are gonna be supportive. Like you know. It's kind of something that you're like, I don't know. What if I say this and everyone's like, no, that's not true. Or people are like, who cares? It's just like one or two people being bad. Why are you like trying to diss this whole thing? But it's like, I swear, go on these forums. Here's how I got the tea, okay? Go on these forums. Everything is public. Here's the thing. It's out in the open, but just no one's reading it. I got on the forums and it's like, oh, you guys are getting grant after grant after grant after grant. And then you look at their treasury and only 2 people are getting paid. And this is like sprawling organization that's doing a bunch of amazing things, but no one is really benefiting economically. And it's like people at the top are, you know, sucking out all of the money. And really outside of the money, I do care, but it's really more than that. It's like these people are getting into positions of power where they're going to continue to do this at a greater level, right? They're going to get a position at a top protocol. They're going to get a position at a top DAO. And then they're going to continue this bad behavior. And they're going to continue to like suck out all of the money and all of the like positives out of these things to benefit themselves. And I'm worried that like we're kind of already there and I kind of like don't really know what to do.
I'll go first. This is a fun one. You know what? All right. Does anyone know the absolute coolest thing that FWB ever did? Any ideas?
No.
Coolest thing that they ever could do. If you're not familiar with this, is like it's like a country club, a digital country club where you buy the tokens, you get to go to the parties. Coolest thing they ever did was Rug A16Z. Got him to buy the token at $100. This is what we're talking about, like VCs extracting value, and a DAO, not a DAO, accidentally extracted value from a VC. There, I went first. You can go.
So the topic that she brings, I'm going to try to wrap it into actually workable issue, because the tension here is accept that this is a part of the mechanic. It's not too different from Web 2 and the founders, etc. Accept that this is a part of the mechanic and gloss over and try to work at the systemic level, or try to weed out personal stories, make examples, and go through that acrimonious process that every single time I've seen it play out, it always feels like it's a no-brainer, but when it gets out there, it's like always close to 50-50 in the post-Trump era. Like people will come up with reasons to defend undefensible shit. And then you're like, the rest of your next decade is gonna be like in this, you know, I don't know, like send an email to CoffeeZilla. I don't know. No, okay, so I was just trying to wrap it. Or how can we build narratives of success where people who do this suddenly have less friends, suddenly are not cool. They just don't get the thing. They might end up with money in the account, but money is just a translation mechanic to some other things, right? I think this has a lot to do with the work you do in general as a community builder. And then you take it, and then the microphone's gonna walk there.
Yeah, I think that social justice type of work is sometimes very, is not really appreciated sometimes. And it's also hard because you're put in a spot that, you know, that basically you gotta make decisions on what you believe is good and bad. And yeah, it's very stressful at some points, I would say. So yeah, I think that the labor of those people that are trying to, you know, do social justice is like a very tough position. And I guess like most of the people that are doing it in the space right now are, let's say, pseudonymous accounts for that reason, because they don't want to expose themselves and they don't want to become a target as well. Because we're talking about millions and we're talking about money. And sadly, in no matter where you are, your life might have a price. And maybe people here in the space don't think about that yet. But yes, that's the reality. When there's power, there's money, when there's all of this bullshit, your head can have a price. And yeah, at least I'm saying this as a Venezuelan, you know? And I experienced that. And when you know that your head can be worth 24 beers, and I'm not joking with that, you're like, okay, this is, you know, do I really want to expose those people? Do I really want to go out there and say that I'm doing that? I personally, I don't know. That's not my job.
Hello. Just wanted to mention something. Actually, in my lifetime, I've seen quite a lot of similar things to what you are talking about. And one of the common denominator is fear. I see that people are scared of exposing other people in doing those things. And I actually want to take this opportunity because I want to get you thinking that we are in a time when things are changing. And we have the opportunity now to say, do we take the step forward and we do something about it without being scared of having no friends or being pointed out? And I have to say, if we actually help the communities and actually educate the communities to learn how to get people accountable, especially the ones that you mentioned at the top, the story is going to be different. So I just encourage everybody here to think about it and say, and actually do an act. What can you do in order to do that? Because we can't really continue being scared. You know, we can't, something has to change. So, and it's up to each of us. So are we going to do something about it, especially with the communities? This is the only thing that I can say now, because I've seen that things can change if we all take a step, not only one person, or not only saying the neighbor, yes, you do it. Each of us can do it. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Well, I just wanted to add one more thing. I like, you know, there's many layers to everything, right? We're humans. Like, we live in communities, we live in societies. The other thing that I'm fearful of, and like I said, this is free therapy for me, so I'm just vibing at this point. The other thing that I'm afraid of, right, is like, as a woman in you know, this technical space, I'm an engineer, and a lot of times at every conference, people come up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, how are you so technical if you're not a developer?" And I'm like, literally, I am. So there's like this like common thread of like everywhere I go, I'm kind of questioned on my technical abilities. I'm kind of like made to feel some type of way. And my other worry with this is like, is this gonna brand me kind of semi-permanently as like someone in the women's space? Is that really what I want my identity to be? When it's something that I've kind of fought, not necessarily the women, but like it's something I fought to kind of be known as a technical leader rather than like maybe a community leader or a social justice person or something like that, where it's something internal that I'm fighting with, where it's like, you know, if you say something, you might end up fighting this battle for a year plus. You might end up known as someone who now people want to reach out to and talk to about this. They want to see tweets from you about it. They want to do podcasts about it. And then inadvertently, you become someone that's known for this rather than the reputation that I've worked for many, many years to have, which is like as a very strong engineer, a very strong developer relations person. So that's kind of like something I wanted to like bring up. And if anyone has, especially women, like I know we all kind of go through a similar process, especially technical women. I would love to hear either right now or after this one-on-one, like how you guys kind of have navigated that and how you like continue to deal with it as you grow in your career.
Just look on the bright side. At least you're not an event organizer. Like, I used to have issues with being a community manager because at least Jesus Christ was a community manager, you know. But now I'm an event organizer. So it's just a joke. This pen was too dark, man. We need. Come on.
Yeah, we went dark. We went pretty dark here. Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be darkest before the dawn, right?
Yes, darkest before the dawn. Yeah.
That's like the theme.
Yeah. Well, I do like though that. I like that some of the vibe here is to try to keep it keep it pretty real. So, you know, I think like, I think at least with crypto, there's something about at least the way that it works and the fact how it uses math and how it uses the systems available to it, that I think it brings some level of clarity or truth, because like the world is very opaque, but the blockchain is not. It's very immediate. It's very clear. And there's something really nice about that and really powerful about that. And as well, just to bring up the Venezuela case again, like there's also something here with crypto that it's sort of there. Maybe it's there for you potentially when your government is not, you know? And I think like I've seen that a few times now. I haven't seen it an insane amount, but I've seen it a few times. And it's very, very real for a lot of people. And I think that if there's something amazing about it and the way that it works, it's that, you know, and especially living in the West and living with stable governments and stable currencies, you're so used to all that stuff working, you'd never think of the world when that actually doesn't work or when it doesn't function for you. But there's a huge section of the world where that's actually a real problem. That's something that goes down all the time, and this stuff might be there and it might be available, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be in terms of the accessibility to it, in terms of where we can get it to people that can actually benefit from that. So, yeah.
It's just to keep trying to be a good facilitator and threading the narrative, right? There's a lot of shit wrong. There's a lot of possible goods. Everyone that's building has to navigate that compromise and make decisions for themselves of what is too much wrong, too much right. And somewhere in between, we have to keep the social elastics functioning. So it's a dance between drawing lines and not drawing lines and tolerating excesses that you might, right? And then we are actually, what I think is amazing about Web3, because it's so non-opaque, or at least less opaque, is that I'm constantly aware of the power struggles that are around me. So I went from somebody who had a very dreamlike vision of the world as a painter, somebody whose imagination function was the main driver of my action, to suffering a severe neuroplasticity, which is there's not a single day in my life where I'm not designing game theoretical matrices in my head for the situations, right? And so the lady that gave that contribution, she left, but she brought the sensation of that imaginal energy that I had in the past. And then I watched my superego come on top and say, but why doesn't that work? Okay, because then, okay, let's say you make one of those denouncements. And then, as it happened with so many movements, and it happens often, it happened in Brazil that elected Bolsonaro, the act of denouncement becomes the mechanic of the corrupt, and they can be used with even more acrimony, even more like insincere smiles to greater effect, and then it dissolves the function of the denouncement itself. So once the game, why isn't the world is not going to change one day after the other, like all of a sudden, I mean. Exactly because if the game theoretical shift is too big, the power structures are already in place to take advantage of those, right? So it is actually the work of transformation over the work of change. I might have made a talk about this at ETH Barcelona. There's technical social technology there. I wish more people watched it, because the work of transformation is a patient's coherence and getting slapped in the face over and over and over and over. And sometimes not saying the friendliest thing for personal benefit or for keeping things in place. I'm saying, no, you're totally off. And I'm going to suffer personally, but I'm not going to take that ride with you. And I try to define that this is the true meaning of punk at the House Party podcast. To be punk is to be based, is to do it the way you think it should, even if it's not game theoretically optimal. Somehow, weirdly, over time, that tends to pay off. So if you're in the audience kind of trying to judge, you can choose if you want to be like Steve Jobs or David Bowie. Or actually, it would be more funny if I say Bill Gates or David Bowie, right? If Bill Gates had an easier ride, but wherever he got, it's not that interesting, right? But I also get confused because I feel like, is this something you can actually prescribe to people, or is it in their personality, actually, in themselves, in the nature of humanity? And there is going to be a normal distribution, and there's sort of a holy wisdom behind it on how people are meant to be different. And there's no like one way to be, right? So I'm just gonna drop this bucket of shit on you guys and see what happens.
Well, I think for all the evil of Microsoft, we're here because of them. Like a PC in every home, like universal internet browsers, yeah, kicked ass. And like that, so that's, we're talking about Ikigai, right? No, you brought it back. So the Ikigai, like Microsoft, Bill Gates, very heavy into like, what does the world need? What can you get paid for? Was that his passion? I don't know. Okay. I'm trying to thread it together.
Well, yeah, no. There's a whole story about Bill Gates being in the first high school that had a computer in the history, and he was the first nerd kid that had access to the first computer. So that's a thing.
I don't know what to comment.
Your heart is.
I don't know what to comment. I think that we like to idealize people, and we like to also demonize as well. And yeah, I just don't think that that's good.
Are we all mostly same in the end, baby?
Yeah. So I just think that we need to be very neutral. Because I personally, we have interacted as friends, right? And I made mistakes, and you have told me about those mistakes, and I learned from those mistakes, and I hope the other way around as well. So I'm constantly shifting what I believe is good and what I believe is bad, because I'm learning together with you, and I'm learning together with everyone.
And also that time, let's get to the South American part where we talk over each other. It's great. Also, that time I was at the beginning of the neuroplasticity change. So maybe the things that I was actually thinking 3 years ago when we had that exchange, I might actually be way more flexible about them now. So
yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just not about being completely radical in one side or in the other side, but more like we are kind of like, how do you call the thing that you can
putty?
Huh?
Putty.
Plastilina in Spanish.
Plastilina, yeah.
Plastilin?
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh for Americans.
So
putty for...
we are like that. We're like Play-Doh, and we need to be malleable. And yeah, I just think that we are learning from our peers as well on basically creating this collective consciousness of what we believe is good. And yeah, basically it's together that we do this. It's not by idealizing someone or demonizing another one.
Well, one thing, just a positive thing about the space in general, is it's ever more viable to have a viable lifestyle without having to try to be the biggest dick in the room, as somebody said. Who said the biggest dick in the room? Okay, so also the biggest genitalia in the room for just general, yeah. Also, I don't think size matters. No, the thing is, right, it's possible to be viable and have, it's easier to have a viable, non-traditional path to success because of the technologies that we've built. More than ever. And watching DAOs go from nothing to what they are now, it's pretty exciting for me, right?
I don't know if it's easier. Actually, I think that it's really tough. I think that we are currently trapped, in this mouse trap, and we're like running within the trap, trying to get out of the trap, but we're still in the trap, and we're like still needing cash, still needing money in order to get out of the trap. So, we're still like, we want to live in a world of abundance. We want to live in a world where, where we don't need to worry about the scarcity of, let's say, financial capital. But in reality is that we do depend on that financial capital. We do depend on, putting food on the table. And most of the people that are not in the space yet is because most of them, they're still in the trap, and they're still trying to put food on their table every day, and they don't really have time in order to
explore other things and try to get out of the trap.
Well, I'm
So-
definitely having that problem, right? I should learn more about DAOs, but I'm actually like literally sitting building a schedule by hand in the website so everybody knows where to go. What I'm trying to say is that I feel a widening of the opportunity space, right? And it's not going to kind of just blow out of out of nothing. I feel that widening because somehow I managed to put ceramics into this event, right? I haven't. For 5 years, I've been obsessed about making ceramics. I started 4 months ago. So it's kind of something, it's becoming wider. And it gets widened by people that from somewhere, either by having no options, being weird like me, or just by decision making. They go to the fringe and they map out the fringe. They understand the fringe. They widen the fringe. They tell the stories of the fringe. Telling the stories of the fringe is the only purpose of this project, right? Events are the excuse, but yeah. So I don't know if you were starting now, where would you go in this space? What would you be doing if you were not beholden to your previous success, career, the things you've been doing? Would you go somewhere else?
Yeah, you talking about go somewhere else in crypto particularly, or just in? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think for me there was a lot of issues with seeing how modern central banking has been playing out, particularly, and it's very abstract. And I'm not saying I'm any expert, but intuitively, there's some things driving inflation and inequality. These deeper things that I was particularly unhappy about with the existing financial system. And the thing with crypto is at least when it was started in a way as a protest to those existing systems. Now, I'm not saying it worked, and I'm not saying it was even good, and I'm not even saying that it hasn't already been captured by a lot of these systems already. I mean, in many ways, it fluctuates with their markets like anything else, right? But there was an idea of having some kind of system outside of theirs that would be able to affect change in the world and would be able to at least act as some sort of protest against what looks like a big injustice. Because we remember 2008, there was, for people in the West, people in a country that's the wealthiest country in the world, they for all of a sudden experienced a massive like inequity in an immediate sense. So the thing is, like, I think with these technologies, there's something about that protest or that rebelliousness that I think there's, as you say, the punkness in it that makes it special, that makes it still worth doing. But I don't think that it's the solution necessarily, because there's bigger things that humans need to come together to figure out to be able to have those solutions that are beyond crypto. Crypto is just a reminder of something, that's it. It's a reminder. And I think what's amazing is that, yes, maybe an enabler, a reminder, it's opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. It's made a lot of things possible. It's created some optimistic senses in a very confusing, sort of dark time, I think, for people. So I think that's very beautiful, and I think that that's really worth doing. But I also think that it's really complicated, and it's not something that I want to sit here and say, like, okay, I have all the answers to these things. I don't. I think I can listen and I can hear. But as well, for me, my expertise, what I focus on is the crypto engineering, the actual building of these systems themselves, the code. That's where I started. That's where I got into this. That's what I love doing. And something about being able to protest with code is very awesome, and I think that's a huge positive for me even still. But of course, just like any good thing or any real protest or any punk movement or anything, of course, it matures, it gets captured, it changes, and it's not what it was when it started, But yeah, I think in the end, maybe it can give people more autonomy. Maybe there's a hope that it can do some good, and that again, when the systems and governments and things that you're relying on don't work for you, or you become their target and it's unethical, that you can have maybe other tools at your disposal that you didn't have before. And it's worth doing for that reason. But again, to what end and to which end, and you know, how we go about doing it is the question. So yeah, it's complex. But that's what I'll say about that.
But just because the panel slot is gigantic doesn't mean we have to be here forever, by the way. To that, I think one of the things that have allowed us to be here, and we're still going to depend on this, is going to be calculated, intelligent compromises of powerful people that are going to feel still like not enough to everybody else, but they were like a slightly better version of what came before, a slightly less compromised position. And these are going to be unsung heroic actions. Nobody's going to appreciate them. And as we grow through having the capacity to build these systems, it's having the fiber of making these actions that are like, okay, I'm not being super extreme on breaking the game theory here, but I'm leaving leeway, leaving space for this to be slightly less shitty. And nobody's going to see it. I think we need those.
Yeah, one thing that I'm gonna say is that if I had the opportunity to start again, I will definitely be doing the same thing. Why? It's because this is the thing that at least is giving me hope, that we can, you know, become somehow free individuals. And by being free individuals, I mean also free, also not at the individual level, but also at the collective level. And yeah, it's giving us the opportunity to actually be able to sign up, or let's say be part of something, but also quit if we don't want it. So yeah, to me, it's giving me hope. It's giving me hope that, you know, we can create more systems that are more, let's say, inclusive, and also at the same time allow you to opt out if you don't want it to be part of them. So yeah, that's why I will definitely continue to be doing the same.
This is a bit of a side question, so if you want to respond.
Yeah, I'll say would I do it again? Yeah, I would. So when people ask about Opolis, they think, oh, it's just payroll benefits. That's kind of boring. And at that level, it is incredibly boring. But at the bigger scale, what we're doing is we're making it so that individuals can wrap themselves in their own companies and become self-sovereign. We talk a lot about how blockchains and like nodes, and are they sufficiently decentralized? Well, are you sufficiently decentralized? If you have one source of income, you're not sufficiently decentralized. You're entirely reliant on whoever it is that's paying you. If you're a founder, you have a little bit more latitude. But if you're an employee, you're just subjugated. And so in DAOs, most people who contribute to DAOs contribute to more than one. So you wrap yourself in your own LLC, you get many different streams of income, and you process them through Opolis, get a W-2, which in the US is like we process your taxes for you. And this proof of income makes it so that you can access traditional financial services, get a loan for a bank, from a bank for a mortgage, car, etc. And so we're building a global public utility infrastructure for, you need this? All right, we did it. One sale right here on stage. It's not, well, so, but it's not about the business development. But thank you for saying that. But it's about the like global public utility infrastructure for employment that we're building. This is broken in the US, but it's broken in many countries, like lots of countries where even if they have socialized medicine, they're not actually providing great care. And people who have more money will buy private insurance, and you get better rates through employment. We encourage people to subjugate themselves to big companies, and that's what we're trying to undo. And at a grand scale, we're all decentralized. We're all nodes of a network. I would do the exact same thing again.
Hey, thanks for this chat. This is super cool. Can you hear me? Is that better? Okay. So I'm wondering if anybody's noticed a little bit of like malicious framing of the term decentralization in Web3, where like it's sold to the community as collective decentralization, but then in practice, due to the nature of markets, it's like competitive decentralization.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is that when we say decentralization, most of the people are talking about being permissionless or trustless. But really, decentralization is just a buzzword, to be honest. And why I'm saying this is because the more you zoom out, the more you realize that things are centralized. So, you know, like people talk about how Bitcoin is decentralized and that anyone can have a node and so on and participate and so on. But if you see it, if you zoom out a little bit and you realize, okay, who are the ones who are actually creating the machines for Bitcoin, for example, you see that it's 2 companies only that are creating the machines and they are deciding who they sell it to. So is that really decentralized? So what are we talking about when we say decentralization? Is it like decentralization in terms of decision making? Is it decentralization in terms of the technology that you're using? What and also like the technology that you're using, like when you zoom out again, you will see that there's some points of centralization somewhere. So yeah, it's more like an ideal. It's more like a goal or like something that we want to achieve rather than the exact state of the industry, I think.
I don't have too much to add to that. I think of decentralization as my ability to work with and commerce with Manu without having to trust a government. And that's like we're independently decentralized as like there's not a centralized authority that can control my ability to just send him $10 worth of whatever. Which I mean everybody has a different definition. I'm just gonna say his thing was right.
I also take more the technical definition of decentralization that he like. I never bought into the the collective idea because I prefer looking at the field and seeing what's actually happening. But again, as I said, it's the widening of the opportunity space. If you look at how many very big technical solutions have been created by people in this room today over the last 4 years and have been able to grow into stable networks and things, I think it's kind of wild. And they're from all over the world, where the 3 decades before, it's just basically Silicon Valley. So that widening is hard to dispute. Like, I'm pro saying the hard thing and looking at the bad, but there is a if I exist in the space, I'm like immobility without crypto. It would never happen. Like, he's an actual engineer. I'm a painter.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to decentralization, though, I think there is definitely the technical ramification of decentralization for blockchains in the way that the nodes work themselves. And then you have decentralization of things like DAOs, which will have like different. They come at it with different properties for different reasons. But I think with these systems, you're asking the question: is it decentralized enough so that, again, if powers that be that are doing things that are unethical want to stop it, can they? Do they have the power to stop it? And can it still achieve the benefits to people outside of that group? And I think if it's not decentralized or not decentralized enough, then it becomes too easy to be taken down. But I think you're right in terms of the power accumulating in the networks themselves and also in these other kinds of systems. I think blockchain engineers are getting better at figuring out ways that even if there is cumulative chunks of validators or whatever, that we can have more options to ensure that they can't poison a system or they can't bring it down. But secondarily, in terms of this accumulation of power in DAOs and in other things, it is very difficult to try to moderate for it, to try to mediate for it. But I do think there's mechanisms to make that very possible. But maybe that's a boring answer, but I think there's a lot of, again, good that comes from building systems which have decentralization, which are trying to resist powers that might be doing things that are unethical. And as a platform, I think blockchains try to do this. And good blockchains and blockchains that are really here for us or here for humans are very, very good at decentralizing themselves because people believe in it and they want to participate in it. And in some senses, even though Ethereum is home to many, many negative things, I think it's also home to a lot of many amazing things. And the fact that it achieves the level of decentralization it does with the problems that it has and with all of the trials and tribulations the community went through to get to this point, it is very beautiful that we've been able to put it together in this way and it still runs and it's still functioning, you know? Yeah, a long way to go. So just the start, but yep.
Final thoughts, because we're gonna wrap it up now. But I agree with you. Like, what I've noticed, two things is a lot of these people are just shilling their bags. They're like, decentralization. By the way, I'm selling that. And you can purchase it here. That's one thing I've learned. And the other thing, from a developer's perspective, you know, a lot of people maybe are like really into decentralization, but if our end goal is to get user adoption and to migrate people over from the existing tooling to here, then if we're optimizing for decentralization and at that comes a cost of user experience, then really what are we doing? Do we just want to be decentralization maxis and be like a group of ideologists? Which, if that's what the community decides, then that's, you know, the people who are with that will do that. But for people like me, I don't really care about, like, I don't want to sit here in like an ivory tower and be like, I'm going to write a paper about decentralization. I want people to use these tools and I want to create things that people can benefit from. And, you know, teams like Polygon and whatever, they get a lot of shit for not being decentralized. But at the end of the day, who got a bunch of developers building? Polygon did. Who's getting a bunch of users coming from Web 2? Polygon did. And that's just one example. There's a bunch of other teams that get shit for being centralized, but it's like they're making some sacrifices to optimize for other things that they care about, which in that specific case, they care about adoption, they care about usage. And then there's other teams who are like, we're decentralization maxis, and they make different trade-offs that are optimizing for that ideology that aren't getting these other results. And I think, yeah, I'll let you close.
I think this is the unseen compromises that are necessary. Like there's an elasticity to the game theory at meta levels, and it's transformation work. It's over and over. I'm fine closing off with Cummings. The next panel is at 3:00 here about meta governance. I'll give it to you. About meta governance with the people from Wildfire DAO, moderated by Shadi Peterson of the Giga Corp. I don't know why I want Shadi. Why Giga Corp? And it's gonna be funny. I can tell you for sure it's gonna be funny.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for having this conversation. We need to have these conversations more often. And yeah, thanks for creating the space. And also to anyone that wants to have a small gift, I brought some Venezuelan money for you guys to remember how important it is to remember that we're living in these imaginary lines where they're imposing what the values are. And we need to remember that these imaginary lines, they don't exist. We created them. And now we're creating these systems that are bigger and that don't have those imaginary lines. And it's, again, the same. We are creating it. We are putting value to it. And the people that are printing that money or that value, we need to recognize who they are. And that's it.
Buffercorns around the moon. Buffercorns are loose.